Hey, friends. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Ssemanda, the intuitive psychiatrist, and you're listening to Stepping into Soul Power. Friends, there are moments in history that we will never forget, where collectively we are affected on deep levels. And one recent moment that I feel like doesn't get much press is the COVID pandemic. There's a big question with that. When tough things happen collectively as leaders, what do we do? How can we lead from alignment during a global crisis? Our next guest has led many during the pandemic, continues to lead post pandemic, is a global leadership advisor who has worked across 80 countries, led teams in Australia, UK, Canada, has this beautiful balance of heart centered wisdom and strategic clarity. Chris March, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
Yes. So, before we begin, I'd love to invite you to maybe take a breath and reflect on your journey, how you got to this point.
It's a great question. And I think the inflection point for me was early 2000s coming out of high school. At that point, my whole life, my universe was centered around basketball. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. Leading up to that point, when I was going to school, everything was focused around basketball. I was not focused on school. I wasn't emotionally mature not enough. So weekends, nights playing basketball, running, training, all my discipline, I was extremely disciplined towards making basketball. So once that dream didn't happen, I realized I wasn't going to be able to make a career out of it. I decided to pivot into traveling and growing up in Australia. The British culture and Australian culture is very similar, so it is a rite of passage for Australians to live in the UK,
Mm.
London specifically. So myself and one of my best friends decided to move to London in 2005. I was 22 at that point, I think it was, and that was a trajectory that changed my life, where I went from someone who was chasing a different dream to then travel. I had 2 glorious years in London, traveling throughout Europe. I had many different friends from high school join me. And then once I came back from that glorious 2 years, that was really everything was centered around where can I move to next? And then I decided to book a one-way to Vancouver, British Columbia. I'd started working in the travel industry on the back of that. I found something else that I was really passionate about. And then my journey continued from living in Vancouver for 8 years. And then I lived in Toronto for another 8 years. And then finally, I just moved back to Australia after 16 years in Canada. So long story short, it's really been a guiding principle of travel that has really put me where I am today. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't decide to make that move and move to London in 2005.
Yes, it strikes me. Kind of want to go back a little bit because the way that you talk about basketball, I even
Oh,
right now, I can feel the love that you have for that activity.
it's basketball was life. It was everything to me. I was obsessed, would be the right word for growing up. And in Australia in the 80s, no one really played basketball, right? The basketball really took off when Michael Jordan was a phenomenon in the early 90s,
Yeah.
and things kind of skyrocketed from there. So for me, basketball, once I first started playing it, I was obsessed, and everything I played every single day. I think from the age of 8 to when I was 22, and everything was around getting better,
Yeah.
getting better every single day. So that was my obsession. That was truly my obsession. And even up to this day, I think I've taken a lot of my disciplined focus, my mindset, and brought
Mm.
that into the professional landscape for myself. I'm obsessed with self development and becoming better. And also in the corporate space, that has been a guiding principle for me throughout my career.
I see. I see. Um, so you were able to pivot. What what do you think if you had to step back and think about it, what do you think is the soul lesson in that?
It's a great question. I think it's understanding who you are. I think in a lot of different ways you try to understand what's part of your DNA and why are you here. It's a bit those bigger questions, right? So when you think about your soul, what makes you make the moves that you do and makes you the happiest? So I think for me, basketball was that first part of my life. And once that part of me was no longer being fulfilled, then I moved into travel. And I think making those decisions, those micro changing moments, that really changed the trajectory of my life. So I think it's putting yourself in difficult positions, uncomfortable positions, and understanding what is going to move you the most over the next chapter of your life.
Okay, okay. The ability to um, meet the challenge of whatever adverse situation that you place yourself in, and then you said being able to make that move. I think about the travel industry, especially during the COVID pandemic. And I worked in the ER during the COVID pandemic. So, like, I can relate to things being very tumultuous during that time. But I wonder for you what your experience was like, and what are the lessons you learned as you were leading others during that time.
What a time. I don't think there was an industry that was more affected than travel. I would say hospitality potentially as well. The industry was absolutely decimated. You take yourself back to that time, 2020 to 2022, the whole world was in cascading shutdowns in different parts, right? This is the gateway for travel. So outside of necessary travel, there was no way to travel. So revenue was hit at an all-time low, and working in the travel industry at that point, we we had to lay off 90% of our staff. 90% of our staff at that point. And at this point, I was working for a large corporation, Flight Center. I think we had close to 500 employees if I go across all of our different pillars at that point. And it was a tumultuous time to say the least. And I still remember for the division that I was responsible for and this other senior leaders in the respective division, we were asked to call each of the people that we were laying off and tell them one by one.
My heart aches when I hear that. And
Yeah,
how did
I,
you reconcile with that?
I still remember some of those calls, Elizabeth. I still remember some of those calls. Some of them were extremely quick. People just yelling abuse at you, telling you to go get lost. And I remember one distinctive call where someone had just had a child and was begging me not to take her lifeline away, to take her job away. And I think I remember staying on the phone with her for probably close to an hour and a half, just trying to talk it through with her and just get her to a point where she would try and understand why why this was happening, why we had to make the change, and just so she could hear, she could be validated for her feelings, right? It was such an incredible time to say the least. And when people are stripped away of their identity, that is huge. So I commend Flight Center at that time, the way we approached that when we were letting people go, we made those calls And those calls will stay with me forever, making those calls. And that went on for a good couple of days before we got through every single person, and we divvied them up and we made those calls. And as the pandemic continued to prolong, we thought it was going to be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It just became even harder to understand what was happening. When was this going to end? And for someone who was in a senior leader role at that point, I was wrestling with everything else. I was wrestling with the questions that people were wrestling with as well. And
Yes.
to give you an image of that, I was single at the time. I was living in Toronto in a 1 bedroom condo in the middle of downtown Toronto. And you weren't allowed to do anything. You weren't allowed to go outside. You were pretty much confounded by your four walls at that point. And I remember walking around Toronto. I'm not sure if anyone's been to Toronto. It's one of the most major cities in North America, most populated city in Canada. I remember walking up Spadina Avenue and it felt like a scene out of Walking Dead. I could look to my right, there's no one there. I look to my left, there's no one there. I look up, there's no one there.
Oh,
So those times were, I'm going to write a book about it one day. I always said that because it was really hard to really remember it in a lot of different ways because I feel, and I'm sure a lot yourself and other listeners feel the same way when you think about those times. Where did those 2 years go?
yeah. There are a lot of things you said that kind of stick out. There's a connotation of
Yeah.
giving bad news is something that you're gonna do if you are in a leadership position. Like it just that
Mm,
you can't give great news all the time. Um, but there are lessons there's a way to do it, right?
yes.
And I wonder, having been through this experience, are there is there practical advice you would give to other people um, about the delivery that the humanity of the person is
Yeah.
maintaining?
Yeah, I think to your point, there was so many examples of poor leadership and great leadership during this time. I
Yeah,
think I remember there was a situation, I think there was a leader of a company in the US. I think he went onto Instagram and he was crying about letting people go, begging forgiveness, or something along those lines. I remember that coming out, and then there was other examples of organizations just getting everyone on a Zoom, and those people who were on the Zoom were staying. Anyone who wasn't was let go.
yeah.
So I think to your point, there was many different examples of humanity versus inhumanity, and I think the practical takeaways is that communication is always the centerpiece, which will help drive it. And a lot of times, as a leader, you have to communicate well to deliver those types of news. And when you're avoiding certain conversations, that is when things don't go well. And two things to think about, which is really easy when you think about those conversations. If you were delivering in a forum where you may not be able to do it in person, how would you deliver something to a person that would come across respectful and clear and kind? That's the question you need to ask it is the way you're going to be delivering this clear, kind, and give the people opportunity to be heard and to be validated.
I love that.
That's very clear.
Yeah, clear, kind, and give them the opportunity to speak their piece, right?
Yes.
Because I'm sure there's a lot going on in there. And as a physician, I think we have to give people not great news a lot. Like, oh, so unfortunately, found out that there might be a terminal illness or something like that. And and a lot of times, people that first time, sometimes people They hear something and then they stop listening.
Yeah. Everything just gets fuzzy, right? You
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
it and you just what did you say? What did you just say, Elizabeth?
No, no, I was just saying yes, yes, and so
No, no,
some.
I'm just saying that's what people
Oh,
say when you deliver bad
yeah.
news. When you deliver bad news,
Yeah.
people just get.
Yeah, yeah, they hear that one piece and then, like, stop listening after you're s you know, say that, and sometimes it takes more than one conversation for
Yeah.
things
I think to your
to
point,
sit
it's
in,
about
or even
providing
time.
a platform. If I go back to
Um,
those different times, again, I think what we did well as an organization is we took upon ourselves to have those individual conversations. So delivering bad news when dealing with hundreds of people, we could have just jumped on a Zoom and said, in short, we're laying everyone off. But we didn't take that approach. We allowed the individual conversations. We knew they were going to be hard conversations. I
yeah,
was not looking forward to delivering those conversations. We had a script that we were given, and I looked at the script and I said, no, I'm just going to be human. I'm going to just be grounded and try and listen to the people I'm having conversations with and help them come to some resolution so they feel somewhat better joining that conversation versus them not.
yeah,
And that wasn't always achieved potentially, but I just wanted people to feel somewhat more collected by the time they finish that call.
I see, I see. As you look back at the pandemic, I'm sure that you see, sometimes I feel like it might illuminate some gaps that we have. For me in healthcare, I definitely see the gaps, but
Yeah.
I wonder for you, whether in leadership or any other societal systems, are there things that at the time we couldn't see that we might be able to see better now and do something about?
Mm, great question. I think when I think about those times with the pandemic, so many different people, I think in the in the travel industry, so many people had their identities taken away from them. I'm
Yes.
talking 10, 15, 20 years career. And there was a lot of heartache in that, a lot of heartache. And then I saw people, once they were able to reconcile that they lost their careers, they were able to pivot into different careers that they may never even considered. There was
Yeah.
so many silver linings through the pandemic that were forced through disruption and through the change of people losing their jobs. So I think the biggest thing is for people to really understand, to have a secondary thing that they're always working on is really important, and to understand if things were to change. I'm not saying there is a pandemic coming up, understanding what truly aligns into your soul of what you want to do, because we've seen so many people pivot into more alignment in their career. So what does that tell you? Is that you've been forced to do something that you may not have ordinarily done. So
Yeah.
really understanding what's the alignment for yourself first versus waiting for something to happen. And I think that's the hindsight of the pandemic. And I also think that understanding that you are always the asset of the organizations that you work for as well, and you have the right to make decisions what's best for you. We feel, and I think that's what most people felt really upset about, is how can you, my employee or 15, 16, how many years, take this away from me? And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest blindside that we felt from so many people. Yet we understood that at the end of the day, during the pandemic, we were a number on a sheet. And that's brutal. That's true. But that's the reality.
I see.
So the lesson is put yourself first always and understand, to your point, what does your soul truly want alignment with? And if that isn't what you're doing right now, where are you at? Where do you need to get to?
Yes. You said something I kind of want to go back to you. You had mentioned that there was this heartache and the reconciliation that had to go through years being a certain
Yes.
type of person, having a certain type of job, and that identity is taken away. What are the steps in beginning the reconciliation process?
Mm. It's built upon that we I went through it myself coming moving back to Australia. Let me give you an example. Moving back to Australia, I
Yes.
had an identity as being successful and having a long career, and then coming back to Australia, I had some struggles to find work because I'm coming into a new market. So for me, what I always leant back on and how you overcome that heartbreak and the reconciliation is understand your proof points. And what I mean by that is for me, I would look at Google reviews of people that I've worked with or some of the relationships that I've formed and have a look at the work that you've done and what you've done to achieve those results and have a look at those success metrics or those conversations of what you've done recently to remind yourself of who you are. You're not lost, you're just finding your way. And that's the most important thing. You've got to remind yourself of where you come from sometimes. And what you do by that is looking at certain data points throughout and having conversations with people that you've worked with as well. So it's not always easy, but you've got to be kind to the person who you hold most of the conversations with, which is yourself, and remind yourself of how you got to this point. So then you can move forward to get what you need to do.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really important, keeping in mind that your history of overcoming things, and
Hmm.
you said something that really feel like it sticks. It's you're not lost, you're just finding your way. And there's something I love to say is the journey is the destination. Um,
I love I love that as well. I think I can't remember. Was it Phil Jackson that said that the journey is the reward. The journey, and if you think about the journey, I think about my own personal journey. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't take that trip to London and move overseas. I could have stayed in Australia. Could probably would have been married, multiple kids, happy life, all that. But I decided to take a different path, and the journey has been the reward, and it's been absolutely incredible and built me into the person that I am today.
yes, and so now that we are post-pandemic, there's this new thing in the world. Well, it's not new. Well, I guess it kind of is. um, it's becoming more and more prominent, and it is called AI.
AI,
And
yes.
yeah, yeah, it
Hot
is.
trend right now.
Yeah, it is changing things and changing the job landscape.
Yes.
Uh, and so I wonder whether there are parallels that you can make between COVID pandemic and this new
Mm,
situation that we're in right now, where AI is really taking hold over multiple aspects of our life.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I'd take it a step further and compare it to the dot com bubble era in early 2000s for those old enough, I should say. Remember when the internet first came around early 2000s, everyone was in an uproar about the internet and this is the robots are coming at this point. Yet today, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation or people wouldn't be able to listen to this conversation without the internet. I believe AI will get to that same level as well. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of governance and regulation around the use of AI. However, the best way that I look at AI is an amplifier of brilliance.
Hmm.
It allows you to do the best work. So whatever your best work is, Elizabeth, let's say, what do you enjoy doing the most? Or I'll ask your listeners that. What are the mundane tasks that you don't enjoy doing? Is it accounting? Is it all the admin type tasks, right? That's the things that you can delegate to AI. So you can do more of the work that you like. That's the way I look at AI.
Okay. I see. I see. So, implications for how you spend your time.
Yes. Yeah, and where is where is your time best focused on if you're a business owner or a solopreneur? Where do you want to be spending the most amount of your time? Look at your day. Look at where you're spending too much time on manual tasks. Can AI take care of this? If so, delegate it so you can focus on high revenue tasks or having conversations like this where you enjoy.
Yes, yes. You brought up a couple of important points. So there's governance because there's a lot of different AI out there.
Yes.
There are ethical issues that
Yes.
you really like. At least, I mean, I know in medicine, people are
Mm.
using AI in some aspects, almost as like a therapist or our
Hmm.
doc, like
Yeah.
asking, "Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
diagnose me." So there are serious ethical issues. I wonder for leaders, because you work with leaders, if you could
Hmm.
speak to some of the ethical principles that they should maybe think
Mm.
about as they go into this landscape.
So, the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, is understanding the use case for implementing AI. Let's use the travel industry for an example. If you're in a travel agency, can you implement a AI chatbot within your website, or can you implement someone who can answer the phone, an AI chatbot that can answer email inquiry and phones potentially as well? You need to understand firstly the user case. What is the cost of doing that internally? What needs to be right in terms of the metrics in order to make this change, and how you're going to measure it moving forward. So it's first identifying where you can use AI within an organization, lay out a use case, lay out the roadmap of implementation, and then making sure that you have some success metrics around it. A lot of people are just using AI purely from a chat GBT prompting type scenario. Right now with that, you it's not an end-to-end solution. You have to have a human in the loop to ensure that the data is accurate. So there's a couple of things you need to be comfortable with is ensuring that any of the company information is that you're sharing is not going to be shared. I think that's one of the biggest hesitations for organizations, right? I can see you.
Oh,
So
no. Yes.
it, yes,
You don't
of
know what they're
course,
doing
right?
with their
So
data.
yeah, so
Or who
making
owns
sure
it.
whatever large language model or whatever tool that you're doing, what is the data and the privacy that you're going to be protected from? So that's probably the biggest step is starting with self-awareness around what exactly you're going to do. Is it a safe environment that you're going to be working with? And how does the AI stack up with your current technology that you already have? Do they work side by side? What does that look like? What will break? Put some metrics and then make sure that your user case will stand up. So start small, in short. Start small, figure out where you can get the biggest lift, and then build from there.
Very good, very good. So it sounds like AI has the potential to really help businesses scale. I wonder, are there other things that businesses should keep in mind if they're having this dream of
Mm.
scaling while staying aligned?
It's really important that everyone's aligned on AI across the organization, and you want to blend the opportunity with humans as well. Right now, you still require humans in the loop. So, where is there opportunity to bring AI, and where can you bring it to complement the skills you already have? I see a lot of organizations that are just using it for the admin side of tasks. As I said, people answering phones, emails, website support. So it's just really important to understand what is the value of bringing that in versus potentially if you have someone sitting in that seat already, as in a human, or if you are to bring in that role, what is the cost of bringing someone into that seat versus bringing AI? What are the risks? What is the upside? and what does the implementation look like, and what are the metrics that you're going to look at to ensure that it's successful. So what I'm saying in short is that you need to balance the human side of things versus the AI, and what are the risks for your organization. To your point around healthcare, there's a lot of risk around data and privacy. So each industry has a certain risk element that they want to look at. So it's very industry specific, but the main thing is to utilize AI with a human.
Okay, important point. And as we go into this new era, what do you think the next generation of leadership will look like? How
Mm.
can the people that are coming up, start preparing themselves, teams for what we have in store?
Great question. And I think one of the things that we're seeing with AI, there's a lot of positives. However, there's also limitations. And I think one of the things that we're losing throughout this is the ability for critical thinking.
Mm,
Instead of thinking about something, we just go to ChatGPT right now. So we're losing the ability for critical thinking. So if you're a new and upcoming leader, think about how are you flexing those muscles, right? How are you flexing critical thinking? And also think about all the things that AI can't take away from you.
yes.
Tone of voice, your story, your journey, your emotional intelligence, your ability to turn up on time, the way you communicate. These are the things that the market right now is transforming the value around. So we're seeing a shift. Think about all the things that AI can't take away from you and lean into those things, starting with critical thinking and communication. If you were to focus on those two things, I'll add a third, emotional intelligence. Those three things you focus on, you're going to be very good 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Oh, thank you for saying that because I see a lot of people, and I'm not tramping on AI. I think AI can be incredibly helpful, but don't give your power away. You got to keep up. You've got to exercise your intellect.
These are tools that are there to help amplify you, right? I think and naturally as humans, I'm sure you see this a lot in your work, we go to the path of least resistance or where it's comfortable. And I'll say it again, comfortable, you have to go into an uncomfortable place in order for you to grow. And that seems so simplistic, and it's shared in so many different variations, but it's so true. The best growth will happen when you put yourself in an uncomfortable position. So make sure that you're doing that and reminding yourself of that regulation. Otherwise, you're going to get extremely comfortable and you may stall and not grow without even realizing it.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I loved all the things you said. Critical thinking, um, remembering just your presence, your story, your journey, your emotional intelligence, the way you communicate that. It's just it is important and really leaning into that. Yes. I wonder for our listeners, because I'm sure they'll want to connect with you. How can they find you?
Two ways to connect with me. I share regular insights on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, Chris March on LinkedIn. I also have a website, one word, chrismarchcoaching.com.
Very good. Well, Chris March, it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you haven't heard it yet today, I appreciate you. The soul in me honors the soul in you. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, please subscribe or click here. And friends, if this spoke to you, leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you.